We've had an amazing response to today's talk, which I think speaks volumes for the topic, that we do need to take stock of our restaurant industry. And I think there's that old saying, if it ain't broke, then don't fix it, but it's a bit broke.
Yeah.
So hopefully today we can scratch the surface on a few things that need to be taken stock of. So I'm going to give, like I said, 5 more minutes, but to everyone who is already in the room, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is LOR's first webinar, mostly because technology frightens me, and today is the truth of that. I didn't even put you in a waiting room, but that's fine. You're all here, you're arriving. What we're going to do is, I asked all of the panelists ahead of time what was one of their biggest bugbears that we wanted to take stock of in the industry, and I got some incredible, very thoughtful emails back from all of you, so thank you very much. And we've narrowed it down to 3. We've added in a 4th. Hopefully we can get to all of them. If you have a question while we are covering a particular topic, instead of waiting to the very end, please pop your question in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And Jane, hi Jane, give us a wave.
Hello.
Jane will be monitoring all of your questions, and we'll be able to take between 3 and 5 questions on each topic. So feel free to just pop those in there. I know some of you also sent through some ahead of today, so thank you very much. They were also very detailed and excellent. So we'll try and get to as many of those as possible. Yeah, maybe what we'll do while we're waiting for everyone to get here is, shall we go around the squares and introduce ourselves? Well, it's not really a room, is it? My boyfriend calls it the Zoom boom room. I guess I'll kick us off. My name is Natalia. I am the founder of Ladies of Restaurants, which is an initiative for women working in the hospitality industry. I've worked in hospitality my whole entire life. My father was a chef turned hotel manager, so it's the only industry I've ever really grown up in and around. And the majority of my family also work in hospitality, including my sister. And I live in Margate with my partner, and we have a little sort of food residency restaurant that's sort of evolving with the changing times, especially these days. It's called Barletta, and we're currently cooking out of our house. Emma, do you want to go next?
Yes.
Underwood, sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry, I assumed then. Excuse me. So I run a restaurant called Darby's, which is where I am now actually. And I've been working hospitality for about 16, 17 years. But I was in academia for a long time until my mid-20s, and I left that. I was working part-time in hospitality, and I left it to work full-time. And I moved down to London 2 years ago. So I've worked around the northwest of the UK and then came down here and opened Darby's a year ago.
Amazing. Jane, why don't you give us a little introduction?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Jane. I'm up in Manchester. I work for a bar in the Northern Quarter here, and I've also worked with Natalia on Ladies of Restaurants, helped out at a few events and with some content and things over the last year or so. So yeah, it's good to be here, to see some faces.
Thank you for your help, Jane. Pam, why don't you go next?
Hey, my name is Pam Brunton, and I am a chef, and I have a small restaurant with my partner Rob up in Scotland called Inver. I've been in and around hospitality since my teens as well, but in between times I've also been to university a couple of times, studied for a master's in food policy, and then worked for some food
Frozen.
farming.
So sorry, can you repeat that last part? I just lost you for a minute.
From
sorry, I heard like farming.
That's what I said.
Okay.
I said I worked for some food charities and campaign groups promoting sustainable food and farming.
Great, got it. Emma Reynolds.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm one of the owners of Tonkotsu. We're a small group of ramen restaurants, mainly in London, one in Birmingham, Selfridges up there. We started in 2012. Before that, we had some not very profitable sushi and katsu restaurants. We've come through hospitality learning the hard way. Yeah, we've just reopened a couple of restaurants for delivery only after being closed since the 18th of March, I think it is. Yeah, so good to see those reopening.
Thank you. Sally, what are you going next?
Hi, I'm Sally. I'm the head chef of the Harwood Arms in Fulham. I've been head chef there for just over 3 years. I've been working in hospitality since I was about 14, to be fair, and then moved to London when I was 21 to be a chef.
Amazing. Mary Ellen.
Hi. Looks like it's going to rain here any second, so I might have to run back inside. Hiding from the noisy children inside. So I'm Mary Ellen McTague, and I'm a chef and restaurant owner from Manchester. I've been cooking for 21 years now. And before that, I mean, I was doing hospitality jobs from the age of about 14, really, doing part-time bits of front of house work and stuff. So yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and I guess I'm here off the back partly of a really interesting chat I had with Sally a couple of weeks ago. We did a panel conversation, and we were talking about some of the things that we think some of the kind of bigger challenges that the industry faces are, and we just wanted to take that further and see if we can come up with some solutions to the problems that I think we all know that we're facing. So, yeah, very glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you all for being here. We're going to get stuck in, just so everyone listening, thank you again for being here. We're going to go until about 5:30. If you have any questions, drop them into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Jane will be monitoring those. We'll be trying to take them as much with each topic we cover as possible. If we don't get to your question, I'm so sorry. We're not ignoring you. It's just because of time. I want to kick off with a huge one that all of us mentioned. And also, I just want to be mindful when we're going through all of these. You mentioned solutions, Mary Ellen. I think that's so key with today's talk, is that we talk from a solution point of view and not necessarily digging ourselves into the negativity and all the things that are wrong, and that we're working towards solutions. So TRONC and tipping. I don't even know where to begin with this. When I moved over from New York, I was shocked by that whole system. And for everyone in the room who doesn't fully understand TRONC, essentially what happens is service charge in a restaurant goes into, I guess, like a special TRONC account. There's a TRONC master assigned to your TRONC, and then that money is used to pay the wages of your staff, some of the wages. I mean, who wants to start on that? I mean, Pam, you don't use TRONC at Inver.
No, we don't, and it's been a long time. I spent 10 years in London, and I'm pretty sure during that time as a young chef de partie, I would have been paid at some point through the TRONC system, but I can't actually remember, and it's been a long time since I've really thought about it. So when you mentioned it the other day and talked about what it actually was, I was quite shocked to realise that it existed, because what it does is it feels like it sort of skews the playing field against restaurants like mine that don't use it. Because obviously staff costs, I'm pretty sure everyone in the room will agree, the staff costs are one of the biggest costs of running a restaurant, especially if you're a small craft restaurant. It takes a lot of skills, it takes a lot of people time to put the food out. And I mean, I don't know, I think maybe between sort of 15 and 20,000 pounds we might be able to save if we took the tips that our customers gave to the staff and we distributed it as wages. And up here, that would be enough for one of us to live on for an entire year. That would be like Rob and I having an actual salary.
Yeah, because actually, can you mentioned in your email about the TRONC how you structure things? Is that actually you don't pay yourself a normal wage, and at one point you were living in a caravan for 4.5 years as a sacrifice almost to make your restaurant come to life. Can you just touch on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's just where we moved. We moved up here, which is, it's quite remote. I've just shown you a picture out the window. There's not a lot of housing around anyway. And what we had, we were offered a caravan to live in, and we said, yeah, sure, because it was somewhere that we could live while we started up the restaurant. And in the end, it was quite good, because if you're living in a caravan, you don't have much things you can be thinking about. You know, you're not about to you're not about to redecorate or like put on an extension. There's nothing to think about. All of the energies went into the restaurant. But it also, there just wasn't much money around in the first few years. It's Inver's 5 now. And we moved into the house that I'm in now at the end of last summer. So for the last 6 months or something, we've been in a house. Yeah, but I mean, there really wasn't any money left in the bank account. After we bought the business, we bought it out of childhood savings. There's no investors, there's nobody else putting money into this. So we just had to make the money that we needed to do the renovations to the kitchen or the bar, or to buy the nice new crockery or whatever it was. We had to make it first, make the money, and then spend the money.
But so you're saying if you had used some of the trunk, then you maybe would have been able to achieve those things quicker.
Of course, yeah. And right now we would have a lot more money for ourselves. But instead, we pay the staff the wages that we advertise, and they get tips on top of that. And I think, because I wouldn't like to turn to our customers and say, yes, of course, all the tips go to staff, but what I actually mean is as part of the wages, because I don't think that that's what customers understand has happened.
No. Emma Reynolds, you also were very vocal in your email about trunk, and you do use a trunk system at Tonkotsu. Could you elaborate on your feelings on the trunk system?
Well, it was created, I think, my understanding, so that HMRC have sight of money that they otherwise potentially wouldn't, and that it is therefore completely taxable, and employees pay income tax on that, but they don't pay NI, which gives them a little bit of an extra break. We use a TRONC system. Our general managers are on a salary. Everybody else is part of that TRONC system. And we're always feeling a little bit, all of that money that's in the TRONC goes entirely to them, and we pay our accountants to process all of that money. So we don't touch that at all. I know that some people take kind of processing fees out of it, 1 or 2% or whatever. We give all of that money to our staff, but we do talk about that system and whether it's as transparent as it could be. I think customers do understand a bit more in London, or that's the expectation. And a price of a dish at Tonkotsu is £11. So it's also, people pop in for something to eat just before the cinema. They might get a couple of sides, and with service charge, it's about £20 a head. If we were to change the model so that we paid a higher wage from the business, we'd have to increase the price of a dish, not by 12% the service charge amount, because it would be subject to other kinds of taxes. So I think you're looking at about a 20% increase on a bill, probably, once you've allowed for everything, maybe a little bit more than that as well. I think it might be the way the industry goes ultimately, but I don't think there'd be any prizes for being first mover, because people, when they're deciding where to eat, they don't think about what they're going to spend when they pay the bill. They look at a menu and they look at the price of a dish, I think, and then they start to work out what they're going to spend, and they don't really. But at our price point, it's not expensive. We don't really get any pushback from customers about paying service charge either. But I think for the government not to have included it in the job retention scheme is very harsh, and considering it's a scheme they kind of created and had oversight of, and then to not include it for some of the lowest paid people in this country, and especially in London, how expensive it is to live in London. I don't really understand why they did that. It doesn't make any sense. We've been able to top up wages a little bit because of the way that we've managed the TRONC pot, but come June, when people are on kind of 80% of a minimum wage, that's it can't be right. And there's nothing illegal about the TRONC system, right? They created it. So I still don't understand. I know there's a legal challenge going on. There's some questions are being asked of the Chancellor to ask, you know, why, try and find out a bit more about why they've done that, and to try and get something back out of it. But
it does feel a little bit like that it is illegal because they're not including it in the job retention scheme, and that lack of transparency that we've just talked about. Yeah, it makes it feel like it's like naughty, that this TRONC system, you know.
It's taxable income.
Yeah. A lot of the things you brought up, I know we're going to hit on later, which is, you know, food costs and also perception. So I want to come back to, TRONC. Mary Ellen, do you run a TRONC system down at the Creameries?
Not exactly. So I've not come across the TRONC system since moving back north, basically. I think when I worked at restaurants in and around London, everywhere use the TRONC system. What we do is we pay, the company pays the full salary, and then we don't have a service charge added to bills. But actually, our previous restaurant, we did have a service charge added to bills, and we called it a TRONC system because it needed to go through payroll, so people were paying tax on it and not getting in trouble later on. But they're taxed more favourably on it, so there's just the national insurance to be paid on that. So it goes through the pay slip, but it's paid in addition to their salary. So it's just that it's their tips basically, but we call it TRONC because it goes through.
That's sorry.
Pam, I feel like you had your hand up before.
Yeah, no, it's just exactly what Mary Ellen said. That's a tip system, and you do have to pay tax on tips, and that's why, like, we do exactly the same thing. All the credit card tips are distributed and taxed monthly, along with wages. But I think the thing, exactly what Emma said as well. It all comes down to the kind of the cost of the food. The cost, the things you can actually charge on your menu. But the problem is, if some people are using TRONC and some people aren't, my food costs, otherwise all the other costs of my business are still there. It's just I can't use this to subsidise the price on the menu. So it's an unfair comparison if some people are using it and some people aren't.
So do you think that then there should be a blanket rule for all restaurants that you have to either use a TRONC system or a tipping system, as you've called it? Sally?
Yeah, I think the thing around it is that it's legal to have this TRONC system, but it's also perfectly legal for an employer to take 100% of that service charge money and do as they see fit with it. So even though legally you can't make up minimum wage from the TRONC, technically, if an employer is keeping that money, then that's what they're doing anyway, even if they are perceived to be putting it into a different part of the business. And I just think that it makes me feel very uncomfortable, the whole system of it. But Emma's right, no one wants to be the first one. Like, everybody agrees that it's crap, but no one wants to be the first one to stand up and say, oh, I'm not going to do this. But actually, the Ledbury did that a few years ago, and they haven't made a shout and scream about it because that's not really Brett's style. But they still managed to be fully booked every night without this. It just says service included on the bottom of the bill, and that's it. And it's just done with, and it causes a lot less headaches. And it actually means that his staff at the Ledbury are now much better off because their full wages included. I mean, obviously, we'll hope there's never another pandemic again. But I think now, as an industry, we've been forced to stop. This is one of the things that maybe we could all come back together and say, right, we're not going to do this anymore, because the government was in talks of changing the legislation with regards to TRONC in 2019. And what they were proposing was that you could still have a TRONC system, but 100% of that money that was taken has to go to the staff, which in my opinion means that it makes it like there's no benefit. Well, obviously there's the national insurance contribution, but I think it would be better just to get rid of it altogether and everybody put the prices up at the same time and say this is how much it costs to come to a restaurant.
So then maybe what we're saying as a solution is that we do need to band together on this, and like you said, to do it all together, because it is a scary thing to do by yourself. I think a lot of you are independent restaurant people and workers and owners, and it can be really frightening to make that big a move. So maybe if it was something that we encouraged all restaurants to do together as one, and unify our voice on it.
Yeah, I guess it sort of depends on the price point, and I think it's probably easier to do if there's less price sensitivity in a fine dining environment, for example, than it would be if we're sitting next to 3 other ramen operators on the same street who are look like they're charging less. You know, just very conscious of that in the decision-making process of where people go to eat.
Jane, your hand up if you got a question.
Yeah, a couple of interesting questions coming through actually. One sort of from an employee perspective is quite interesting. I'll just read it out, anonymous. If we can't afford to pay the whole salary of, I have been in 2 restaurants that will not give me a written statement on my full wage, and I'm expected to have a verbal agreement on my salary and a contract stating significantly less. Can't we at least change this? So I guess that goes back to what you're saying about transparency and actually staff losing out a lot.
Yeah, I think it is that transparency from employer to employee. I had a friend who moved from New York and got a job over here and was shocked to see that, you know, it wasn't transparent about her salary being 50% from TRONC, or she was told that, and it was just expected that was the norm and wasn't really given an accurate explanation. So yeah, I guess how can we as employers be better about communicating when we are using the TRONC system?
Yeah, I mean, there's a formal letter that states, you know, your job level, how many TRONC points you get, what the average of that TRONC point value over the last however many weeks. So I'm surprised by that, and I'm also shocked that people are using the TRONC pot. The businesses are still using the TRONC pot. I haven't honestly heard of that for quite a while.
Yeah, not great.
That's really not great. Yeah.
I think I was just going to say that if I muted myself.
No, you can hear you.
I was just going to say that, you know, you're talking about sort of getting everyone to band together and do this at the same time, because who wants to be the first to do this and potentially shoot themselves in the foot financially? And the thing is, like, from a business point of view, I absolutely wouldn't recommend it, because our staff costs are totally crippling. And, you know, there are so many, and I know we're going to come to other stuff later, so I don't want to go on too much, but I think there are so many things that are interconnected here, that in order to really allow restaurants and get on and do some stuff and hospitality businesses to get on and do some stuff they'd really like to do, I think other stuff has to come in first. So about understanding what you need to charge and why. So it's possible to make the changes that we all want to make.
I mean, there's a lot of shifts that probably need to happen at the same time. And I think, like you said, we're going to touch on them later. I think TRONC just being such a big bugbear in the room, and an elephant. Pam, I feel like you're just itching to say something. Go.
The thing is just if something is wrong, then why is it not government that's showing leadership on this? Like, if there's playing food,
I mean, if you want to talk about,
I know, but if
leadership,
why should it be down to individual restaurants to
yeah. I mean,
you know, in some ways I have already taken the first step. I have already done that, shooting myself in the foot. I'm out there, you know, and we've worked really hard over the last 5 years to make sure that our pay got better and better and better the more established we got, and all of our staff have been paid better and better and better before Rob and I have. And that's just because that's who I am. But you know, definitely smarter business people would tell me I'm being stupid. That's for sure.
But I think that that's where people misunderstand the restaurant industry a little bit, is that yes, we are a business, but we're also a business of people.
Yeah.
Emma Underwood, you are from the front of house.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. What is, I mean, front of house, obviously, notoriously, we're in charge of like getting the tips and making sure that we get tipped and that the service is amazing. What is your take on service charge as a whole? I mean, is it sometimes it hurts when people ask to remove the service charge, or if you don't get a good like in New York, if I didn't get 20%, you know, I'm gonna come talk to you about why.
That's the view.
I mean, that's just me. No, but also because that's the biggest part of our job. So this whole like TRONC service tipping culture, what's your thought on it?
I mean, I've worked in places without compulsory service charge and I think that, like, from my experience, the staff will still work just as hard. Like, the front of house will still work in the same way. It doesn't matter if they know they're definitely going to get it or not. But I think it's from like a guest perspective. When the places where I've worked in where it hasn't been compulsory, it's a little bit more of like, it feels like it's almost like a gift, and it's like a way of saying thank you at the end of the meal, and it's a bit more there's a bit more of like an occasion to it. Whereas with it being compulsory, it's different. It's like it's a given. It's just on there. I mean, we're like, as I'm sure a lot of you know, Darby's is next to the American Embassy. And we get a lot of Americans in here saying, you should take service charge off so we can give you a higher service. Like, they think that the service charge is actually really low. And they take off so then we can give you more. But yeah, we haven't made that step.
I guess some restaurants are scared to take the service charge off, and then what if no one tips?
Yeah.
But I guess that comes back to that, like, you know, like costing your food out so that you don't have to add service and that it's already built into the price.
When I worked at when I ran Where the Light Gets In, we went through a time when our tips were getting really, really low. And we worked out that it was because most people seemed to think that it was included. So then we added it on, and everyone was absolutely fine about that.
I think guests are more inclined and happy to have the service charge added on.
Yeah.
Than, you know, because it's not a blanket rule for all restaurants that everyone puts service charge on. Sometimes they think guests are confused and then they don't leave it if it's not included. Or then it's like that awkward, oh, is service included? And then you have like that awkward, you know, maybe it's just English people, but.
Yeah, I think that's the thing though. I think that guests struggle to understand it. They really do, because you often get that conversation as well as like, oh, is it better in cash or card? And yeah, I think there's so much confusion around it.
Okay, so I just want to recap on TRONC, because obviously we're not going to get like massive solutions today, but this is just scratching the surface. But I think we need more transparency from employers to employees, more transparency for the guest, and potentially moving away. Well, obviously all employers should be moving away from using this TRONC bucket to pay their staff. That needs to go. And then looking at a way to increase the food costs so that everyone gets paid.
You'd have to,
yeah. Well, then I think that we should move to food costs or the finances of what it actually takes to run a restaurant, which is another thing that I don't think is particularly clear for the public. I think, you know, we've all heard the age-old complaint, well, why is this plate of cauliflower 14 pounds? I could get this cauliflower at the co-op for 5 pounds. It's like, well, let me tell you why. So a lot of stuff goes into that cauliflower, and not just the ingredients of the food.
No.
Who wants, Mary Ellen, why don't you take this one first?
Well, so this is something I've felt like needs a lot more clarity for people who are paying for food in restaurants, because it doesn't do anyone any favours that with the situation we've got at the minute where people don't understand what they're paying for, and then you're dealing with people who think they're being overcharged when actually you're barely making anything on what you're asking them to pay. So I was talking to a local design studio about 3 months ago. They were going to do an infographic for us, which was going to be like a pie chart type thing, showing all the different costs. And there would be the tiniest sliver left, if anything, that would be the profit. And there would be, you know, however much was wages, the 20% for VAT. And I think if people could just see it and go, oh, they're making nothing on this, then I think it would be really helpful, because I think there's a bit of, I don't know, there's a problem, and I don't know if this is more in the UK than elsewhere, but oftentimes I feel like customers kind of have a bit of a lack of trust of restaurants. They think that you're deliberately overcharging on wine and on dishes, make extra cash, when actually you're just, I mean, you know, I've said this, I don't know how many times this last week, but even breaking even to me feels like a real triumph. If we do a week where we take enough money to cover our outgoings, I am delighted. And it's hard won, you know, it's really, really hard to, it's really hard to make money out of serving good food and wine. I think obviously it's doable because people do it, and maybe I'm just running a business, but I just, you know, I think when the labour costs, when you know, if you're buying in veg that needs a lot of work to do to it to get it, you know, to the table, then it's just very expensive. It's very expensive to do. And I think it would be really beneficial for restaurants and for customers if everybody understood what was going on. And the other thing I think that would be really beneficial for us in the hospitality industry would be some real honesty about how hard it is to make money, and maybe some sharing of ideas on how to do it as well would be good, because often I know we all do it and people go, how's it going? You're like, yeah, great, really busy, it's great. And actually, like, this is not great. You know, and I think if we could support each other much better, I think if there was more honesty and more clarity. I mean, no one wants to say, oh, yeah, this week was rubbish and we're probably going to go out of business next month. That's not, you know, that's not chit chat, but maybe something approaching that could be, you know, we could have just a bit more openness and a bit less bravado about.
I think what we've seen through this pandemic, you know, and it's awful, but it's really brought to the forefront that everyone's bottom line in this industry is horrendous. Like, we're all breaking even. We're all really, really fighting and like even the big ones. And that, you know, I think when you say about people not being honest when things aren't going well, that's so true. This huge pride gets in the way, you know. I think that, you know, we saw the closing of Mark Hicks's restaurants. We don't know that maybe they were doing really bad for a while, and then this has pushed them to be like, you know what, there's no point in coming back from this. Why are we putting ourselves through this, you know? It's sad to see the loss of jobs, but yes, Sally.
I think you're totally right. I think especially in the last year, it's been getting harder and harder to actually make money. And I know of other businesses, we certainly weren't as busy this Christmas as we were last Christmas. People weren't spending as much, whether it was Brexit or whatever. But I spoke to Mary Ellen about that infographic when we spoke earlier last week, and I'd actually been sort of working on the similar sort of thing. But I think it would be good to find a way to let the general public know what the actual real cost of a meal is. Like you say, you know, like at the Harwood, it's £50 for 3 courses, and obviously £10 of that goes straight away on VAT. Then you've probably got another £12.50 goes on salaries, another £10 on food costs, rent, rates, gas, everything. You know, by the time you actually get to the profit, it's very, very little. And it's not that we're trying to do anyone out of money and make, you know, make bucket loads of money. No one's making bucket loads of money here, let's face it. But I think one of the things we could do is like look to other countries that do make it work and say, well, how do they do it? You know, in France, for example, people especially in the high-end restaurants, it costs a lot of money because the public appreciate the true cost of food. You know, you go to Paris, 3 langoustines on a plate is €99 for a starter. It's crazy, but people pay it, and other people still go there. So it's about changing that public perception, I think.
So it's the value. I just want to put this out there to anyone listening that can write for people. The media, we need your help on this one. If you could just help us out and explain to people what goes into a restaurant, that would be great. Emma and then Jane.
Yeah, the only thing for me though is that this industry is the hospitality industry, and like, who wants to go to a restaurant and hear about how little money they're making? I don't care. If I go out to eat, I want to go and sit and chat with the person that I'm dining with. I don't want to hear about, I think it would be a depressing thing to know about, really, from a guest perspective.
But I guess it's about positioning to the guests so that they understand the values that they value that experience as much as we value them coming in to see us.
I'm optimistic that this pandemic will have taught people this. You know, all these people sitting at home making sourdough and realizing that it does take a long time.
But banana bread, easy peasy. Jane, we've got
Lauren basically asking the same question as you just have, Natalia. Like, how do we go about doing this? How do we communicate the costs? I don't know if anyone has any ideas other than getting the media behind and creating just a bit more public awareness, whether it's in the restaurant, which might put a lot of people off, or...
Yeah, I think Emma makes a good point there about it being, maybe that's not a laugh to see that you're sitting in a failing business. But I think, I mean, so, you know, clearly I'm not in PR. I think there has to be a way of communicating this so that rather than making people feel sad, it kind of elevates their, the amount of respect they have for the trade, or the amount, you know, that just a general understanding that it's worth paying for good food.
I think there's something that you brought up, Mary Ellen, actually, when we were preparing for this, about comparing the restaurant industry to the arts.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me, because how many times when we've had time off, have we gone to the theater and you've spent, you know, between sort of 75 up to 120 on a concert ticket or a theater experience? You know, people value those experiences that are one night. You're going for 2 hours. You know, people are lining up to see Hamilton, and they value the theatrical experience. And yet, and you know, I know we see restaurants like Noma and 11 Madison Park and Davies and Brook, and then creating these theatrical experiences. But why can't that trickle down to the Harwood Arms or Inver? You know,
I think it should. I think eating in a restaurant is a cultural experience, and I don't think that only applies to places like Noma or 11 Madison Park. There are cultural occurrences that happen in restaurants of all kinds. But you think about going to the theatre, and you will pay a lot of money, but then they will have some tickets that are cheaper, that are subsidised. And also they are able to apply for all sorts of grants and funding. That's available to them because they're considered an art form. And I think Sally mentioned about like looking at how they do it in France, for example, where they're on the maximum number of hours you can work a week, which is kind of related to this in the employee costs, from an employee cost point of view. But they pay much less VAT there in restaurants. It's a really, really low rate, so that helps. But that's because they're recognised as being culturally significant. They're important to have in a community, like in a village or in a town. They, you know, for the general population, they're considered an important part of life. And I think people do value them here and do miss them, but because, and this is something that Emma had mentioned, because of how people view working in restaurants, and also because of the kind of the lack of understanding around what it takes to produce what they're eating, I think they're kind of viewed as a business like a shoe shop or any other, and it's not. It's there's a craft and a skill, and on all sides, front of house and kitchen. There's an artistry, but I think because it's physically quite hard work and generally low paid, it's not valued in the way that it should be.
And I think it's so interesting what you're saying about like culturally significant, because how many times do people travel to destinations or even come to London or Manchester, you know, Scotland? People are traveling to Inver specifically just to go to your restaurant, Pam. I mean, like, when we talk about culturally significant, Well, the reason why consumers will go to a city just so that they can dine in a restaurant. So I think, like, when you said that, the whole theatrical comparison, it's all I could think about was people going to the National Portrait Gallery and then going into Soho and dining at, I don't know, at Tonkotsu. Do you know what I mean? Like, it brings people to neighborhoods. We've seen this massive change in East London. Even when I was living in New York, there wasn't a great restaurant on every single corner. You would have to go to these different pockets of the city and experience them. It makes people try new things. It's culturally significant. That's what we're saying.
I think so anyway. I'm sure there are many that would disagree. So.
Jane, we've got a question.
Going back to the arts council funding, somebody's saying that NOMA bases their funding on arts funding, and they pay 1 out of every 2 chefs because, like, the arts, they rely on interns, which is obviously quite an exploitative model, and they're asking if we can't instead campaign for lower rents so that our costs are lower.
Rents, that's a topic in itself, eh? We've seen it like crazy in the big cities, especially in London with the premiums. I don't even know where to begin there. That's property is not my bag. But how do we how do we communicate with landlords too? Anyway, I really think that's actually a bigger topic that we could tackle maybe at a later date. But can we touch on what this anonymous attendee is saying about NOMA's setup of having 1 every 2 chefs paid? Because I knew that, and I think I agree and I disagree with it. We're talking about fair pay, but we're also in an industry where it was traditional for people to have stages and do their staging for free because they were getting experience.
Is that what this person means?
Yeah, so NOMA would run their kitchen, like literally run the kitchen.
Yeah, I've been a stagiaire at NOMA, so like literally, is that what we're talking about? It's not that they're because having a workforce of stagiaires is not quite the same as having that same number of chefs. And I mean, yes, of course, it definitely feeds into the economics of places like NOMA, that they can attract a large number of stagiaires and that they can use those stagiaires to do a whole heap of extremely time-consuming jobs. I mean, like you peel juniper berries and like I could never pay anybody to peel my juniper berries. But we do use stagiaires in Inver. Like, people do come to us. In fact, before this whole thing happened, we had a pretty full programme of stagiaires, 1 at a time, generally 1 person at a time, from April right through till October time. And we pay for their accommodation and we feed them. And I will personally talk to every person who comes on board and find out what it is they want out of the experience and try and help them get whatever learning it is, whatever it is they want. I mean, we're quite a desirable location because you get to hang out in this incredibly beautiful place. We don't do crazy city working hours. And we're a pretty nice, friendly, supportive bunch of people. So, and you do get to, and you get a proximity to ingredients, you get to forage, you get to pick seaweeds off the shore, you get to meet the suppliers, you get to go garden if you want.
I'm coming.
Yeah.
I want to start, please.
It's not inherently an exploitative situation. It's more like, yes, you can exploit it if you want to exploit it, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a fair trade. But there's a big question about what you actually value. And if it's only financial interactions, then of course the fact that we're not paying them is exploitative. But if you can value all the other stuff that we are giving them, in much the same way as I think we need to learn to value all the things that restaurants do, apart from give you a plate of food, then as soon as you can start putting a worth in all those other things, it's not an exploitative situation. And there actually is a big argument about what sources of other funding, be it local development agency or arts council or whatever else, could potentially remunerate restaurants for all of the other things that they actually do other than just feed people dinner, because we do a whole bunch of stuff.
I really like this idea of setting up like a hospitality grant fund, that people can apply. because they are, I can keep saying it, Mary Ellen, culturally significant.
Let's get badges.
Yes, I think we should set this up. I'm putting it at the top of my list as a solution.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying, Pam, is so spot on. Like, it is about what you value. And,
Yeah.
you know, like I was just thinking, if you were going to give me accommodation, then that would cover one of the main costs that would give me a fear of like going to do a free, you know, stage with you. And it's not going to be for the longest time. How long do you do them for? Like 3 months, 6 months, or a month?
Different. I mean, at the time I was at Noma, it was 4 weeks of the month. Now I think it's minimum 3 months.
Wow.
And sometimes longer that people stay. And with us, it's between 2 weeks. We say 2 weeks minimum, so between 2 weeks and 3 months people have signed up for.
And I mean, I think we'll hopefully touch on this when it comes to the perception of the hospitality industry. But in terms of education, there isn't necessarily, other than like a really expensive education at Le Cordon Bleu or the CIA, you can go and get these.
It's an alternative way of getting experience in the industry before you commit to it full time as well. So we do have 18, 19, 20-year-olds who are interested in cooking as a job, and they come to see if they like it.
It's a great it's work experience.
Experience.
We kind of went on a bit of a tangent. Are there any questions that we should be answering that we've missed over this discussion around food cost, Jane?
Yeah, there's one for Pam actually, from one of your old colleagues, Lauren.
Lauren was a stagiaire.
Yeah, she's just saying that. She's asking what we can learn about creating a destination restaurant that sources high quality ingredients and a culinary experience that is valued and understood by the customer in terms of price and importance in the restaurant industry.
Oh, I'll just answer that just like straight. I think that probably is the biggest question. What I mean specifically, I think we set up Inver very much so that we could connect the landscape with the food, with the experience that everyone's has. But from coming here, it's not just about eating dinner; it's about eating a certain kind of the ingredients that we forage and pick and buy from the local suppliers, eating them in the location where they were grown. So you can sit in the dining room at Inver, you can look at the water where your shellfish came out of, you can look at the hillside where the lamb was running about, you can see the chefs out there picking wild herbs and seaweeds and all the rest. Like, you're part of that. And it's a different way. I guess it's about connection, connection with land, connection with people, connection with the food, and that understanding of the pie chart, I guess, that we're talking about to an extent. Though, they're probably not that interested in our laundry bill and all the rest. But so, I mean, I'm not sure what Lauren, what she's actually asking me to do.
Well, no, I think, Lauren,
is it something about like, you know, what does Inver do to add value to what is on the plate? And it's kind of about that, really. It's about the location and connecting the people and the land and the food.
Yeah, and I think, and Lauren, forgive me if I get this wrong, but I guess what you're trying to say is, how can we teach other people to understand? Because what Pam has done is she's created a customer that values and understands the food chain and value in a restaurant. So how can we recreate that in other ways? And I think that might be not possible, only because I feel like everybody dines in certain restaurants for certain reasons, and going to a restaurant like Inver isn't going to be for everyone, in the same way that, you know, not everyone's going to love coming to our restaurant or enjoy our food. Oh, we lost Emma. Hopefully she'll come back. So I think that when you're creating a space like Inver, you know, you are essentially creating your own little tribe of people that are going to follow what you do and believe in what you do. So it can be quite hard maybe to replicate that in every aspect of the hospitality industry. Does that make sense?
We've got somebody else asking if any of this is it would be suitable for the more casual dining sector, which I guess touches on what you've just been saying, Natalia.
Yeah. Also, Inver's not fancy.
No, and I'm not saying that at all. I think it's more of like a thought process and understanding why that experience and why what you do is important. And a certain type of person that's going to come and dine with you is going to see the value in that supply chain and why you do the things that you do, because they're going to take time and come and stay with you. It's not just a fleeting visit, you know, coming in and out. The commitment.
But I also think that quite a lot of restaurants do what we do to a certain extent. Like they do champion suppliers and they do advertise the provenance of their ingredients, either by using, you know, like the location or the supplier's name, or, you know, even just Parmesan cheese is saying this is not just your average bit of cheese. It's communicating something that's a bit more about than just, you know, it's fried chicken from wherever.
But I guess we're going to keep bringing it up because it comes down to what you value. It's just going to be that V word over and over again. Value, value, value. Any other questions that we need to tackle right now, or should we move on to... Oh, Emma's back. Emma, you're back.
Hi, sorry about that.
It's okay. These things happen. Or shall we move on to, because we've touched on it a few times, but I guess the society's perception of the industry, which I know is something that Emma Underwood brought up in your email, particularly working front of house. I know that's something that one of the big reasons why I set up Ladies of Restaurants was because I felt like growing up in my 20s, the world was telling me that what I was doing was a stopgap job, or that it was like, when am I going to get a real job? Or they didn't have any real trajectory set out in front of me. I wasn't aware of like the steps I needed to make to be successful from a front of house perspective. Can you relate to that? Emma Underwood?
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think this is something I think on a lot, and it's something that, like, it's a conversation that I have with my team a lot as well, about how to take pride in what they do and how it isn't just a stopgap. We have like a real mix. We have students working with us, and we have people that want to pursue a full career in the industry with us as well, so we're really lucky. And we're lucky as well in that we're a big space, we're a growing space as well. We're only on the first phase of the restaurant as it is, but there are two other phases that we're growing. We've got a rooftop pool and we've got a wine bar next door as well, so we're lucky in that it's, when people start with us, it's clear that there will be progression for the right people. But then trying to get that message out on a wider field and trying to attract people from outside the industry and understand that there is a huge career that could be ahead of them is like really difficult. I think that the media is more focused on chefs, and that's for like a lot of valid reasons. Chefs sell food, they sell equipment, like front of house, what can they sell? Maybe like a nice apron or something like that, or some napkins, but it's just not as like, it's not as an attractive thing to shout about as cooking is. It's not as relatable. So, and I think as well, the other issue especially in the UK, is that it's seen as a servile job. You know, you're waiting on someone, you're answerable to someone who's a stranger. There's a lot of like, there's a lot of issues with the class system in the UK, which I won't even begin to go into today, but it is kind of related to that. So yeah,
I do think that does transfer the travel over to America, because there is a class system there. Maybe not, it's not as bad perhaps as the UK. It was definitely one of the first things I noticed. Yeah, but does anyone else, I guess we have a lot of chefs on this call, Sally, Pam, Mary Ellen. What do you think we've had a lot of like Great British Menu and all of these different chef shows, and, you know, in America there's Top Chef, and so there's this like Hollywoodizing of being a chef and this celebrifying it. Do you think that's been for the good or the bad of our industry? Don't all jump at once.
I mean, I think there's probably a bit of both, right? There's, it's been good that people can see that people can engage with food and cooking a bit more generally, but then it's not really representative of what actually goes on in a restaurant kitchen. You know, like what you see going on in a cooking show is not necessarily a restaurant kitchen thing. It's just somebody who's making some nice food, and it's a skill you can replicate at home, which is also probably why it's easier to make TV shows out of chefs than from front of house guys, because there are things you can teach people to do in the house that they can do with food and cooking, that not necessarily so much with the front of house trade, unless somebody wants to tell me different.
No. I'm always like, how can we have a front of house television show so we can get more people excited about front of house? But Emma Underwood, you're so right. Like, do we teach them how to fold napkins or carry 3 plates on one arm?
Yeah, but it's also not necessarily like, is that actually the best channel by which to valorize front of house? I don't know that it necessarily is.
Yeah, no, of course.
But I guess it's not about celebrifying front of house, and I think this comes up in a lot of Ladies of Restaurants events, is about pushing more and more of those leaders to the forefront and having more role models, visible, and not just chefs. No offense to you guys, you're all amazing, but it's nice to it's just not. Yes, Sally, go for it.
I also think that the majority of the chefs that do make it onto the TV and are pushed forward are very specific type of chef. Yeah. So it's not a real representation of what is actually going on in the industry, and like it's glamorized, the screaming and shouting and all that crap is glamorized, and that's wrong. And I think maybe it does make some people want to do it. It probably puts other people off because they think, oh, I don't want to go into that environment. But it doesn't, being a chef doesn't mean that you have to work in that environment. I mean, it probably did 20, 25 years ago, but now it certainly doesn't. But again, it's that perception of the industry. Like, people look at some chefs as rock stars, but then they'll go and they still look down on it as a job. And like, it's not, when I was at school, they were like, right, you go to uni, you do this, you do that, and like working in hospitality wasn't even put forward as an option. But actually, there are a lot of people out there that, like myself, that it's not that I just wasn't suited to doing a office job, or I was suited to doing a creative job. In the same way that being a musician is creative, or being an artist is creative, I think working in hospitality is creative, and it's tactile, and it's so rewarding. But unless we sort of get into people's heads that it is a viable career option, then that's why people aren't coming in, and people are still sort of looking down on it. So I remember saying to my aunt, oh, I'm going to be a chef, and she's like, oh, what would you want to do that for? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's fun. I get to cook food, and I love the pressure of it all, and I sort of thrive on that. And I tried working in office for a year, and it was fun for a bit because it was a novelty, and then after a bit I was just like, I want to go back to doing this other thing. And it's just this whole other world of working that you never really exposed to until you actually get into it.
Yeah, and I think, I can't remember if it was Emma who brought it up, but about getting into schools, how we need to be getting into, I'm going to come to you, Jinx, I know we've got some questions, but how we can be teaching people from a younger age about getting into this industry, and cooking and restaurants. Because you're right, like what you're saying about you didn't want to have an office job, and maybe if we can tell young people that it's okay to not work office 9 to 6 jobs, that there is this amazing industry you can be a part of, maybe we'll see the next generation come from that. And it's the community behind it as well. Like, it's such a nice job to have socially, like all the people you get to meet all the time, and it's great.
And it's one of very few professions where you can actually share your workplace with your friends and family. Like, people come to restaurants and share that with you, and your colleagues from other restaurants, and everyone comes, and like Emma was saying, it's a great community, and it's really, I can't think of another equivalent, really.
No.
where that would happen usually. Jane,
let's take some questions.
Yeah, so we're sort of answering this as we go along, but just to try and find out some solutions, Ellie is asking, she's always been told hospitality is a temporary career and still gets asked what she wants to do after restaurants. How do we change people's perceptions and show that front of house is a career and one that we should be proud of? You could probably even extend that to back of house as well, chefs too. Is it, I mean, somebody else has mentioned there's a wine tasting master show coming out on Netflix. Is it things like that, or like you say, going into schools? Does anyone have any ideas?
I mean, I really genuinely think it starts with us. We have to value our jobs and be proud of our jobs, and I think someone's actually said it does start with the employer to set the tone, the statue of chefs in front of house, to put them on the same level of the same importance. I think there's always been like this hierarchy, you know, front of house, back of house. That war has been going on for so long, and hopefully it's starting to dissipate a bit. I think unifying our voices and being proud of saying I work in a restaurant and I work front of house and that's where I work, and we need to change our own internal minds, because that for me was my biggest thing. I was always like, I was embarrassed that I was a waitress. I had this thing in my head that I didn't want to be a waitress by the time I was 25, because I just assumed that 25 I shouldn't be a waitress, I should be a manager or not working in a restaurant. And it was only because I didn't look around me and see other people proud of working as a waitress, or to be honest, I didn't have a role model. So I think we need more role models too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do we get them?
Looking at them, they're you. It's all of you. Any other questions in there? I'm just having a look. Sally's back.
Hi, Sally.
Hi.
I just want to read out Helena's comment, which was really nice. Emma, the nicest thing I heard was that what we are making as a front of house staff member is that we make someone's night. People have stressful days, they have good days, they come to us and are treated well. Hopefully the food lives up to that too, but the welcome and experience is what they will remember.
Yeah, because it's not just about, it's not what you're eating, it's not what you're drinking, it's the time you're spending with someone. And that's what we're doing. We're facilitating experiences.
Yeah.
Not about what you're what you're putting in your mouth or whatever.
Yeah.
I think, and who was it? I think it was Mary Ellen who said that the whole hospitality industry just needs a PR person behind it, just changing the whole...
A whole PR job, like a whole
PR job.
Whole changing hearts and minds, national kind of,
We're doing it. I was like, sign me up. Let's go. Well, I want to finish off with our last topic for today's webinar, which comes just because next week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's something that's been talked about a lot in the media in relation to the hospitality industry. There's Pilot Light, which is a campaign all about supporting people in the hospitality industry with better mental health. Over here in the UK, there's also Kelly's Cause, which is a charity that was set up because a girl called Kelly unfortunately killed herself because of the very stressful life of a chef, and she couldn't, it's a very sad story. And actually next week, they're going to be taking over the Ladies of Restaurants Instagram to talk a little bit more about mental health and what they do and how they're helping to actually train restaurants on mental health awareness and coaching, so that you within your restaurant can be better equipped to handle any of your staff's issues. And I think just having some more clarity around what mental health is. Because it's a very strenuous job. I mean,
I think one of the big challenges we face is that it's really difficult to look after someone's mental health when you're not looking after their physical well-being. And I think the demands of the job are such, and it comes back to the financial model. The financial model is such that most restaurant businesses have to work their staff really, really hard in order for the wage percentages to work. And we're talking about wage percentages that would be totally laughable in quite a lot of other industries. But even, you know, I have to work 7 days a week. I have to work 80, 90 hours a week because I can't afford to employ anyone to do the other stuff that I need doing. And I know that I'm definitely not alone there. That is quite a lot of not just business owners, but head chefs and general managers. And I feel like it's getting a little bit better for the more junior staff in our industry these days. And I definitely don't have any chef de parties or junior front of house staff or KPs or anyone working more than like a 40, maybe 45 hour week. But as you get more and more senior and your responsibilities increase, if somebody's off sick, you fill in, you work an extra day. If you know that you kind of but particularly when you're running a business, I think when things aren't working out financially, you need to cut back on staff. You take up the slack, and so I think until we get to the point where we've kind of figured out the finances a bit, and we're not paying 20% VAT anymore and all that kind of thing. And so therefore we can afford to employ more staff so that the working week is less punishing. I think we're really going to struggle to properly take care of people's mental health, which I think is dead important. Obviously it's dead important, but it's quite hard to do. It's quite hard to do that when you're working people really, really hard, and to feel like, to not feel like a bit of a hypocrite.
I guess, yeah. For me, when I was reading and thinking about this and like why I always struggled with my mental health, and it's because I always had this, you know, fear of missing out. Like, we're social people, we work in hospitality, we're serving people, we're being social, and then actually our entire social life is like non-existent. We miss birthdays and weddings and family reunions and all these important moments, and that for me was always affecting my mental health. I felt like I was missing out on a part of my life, like my work-life balance is completely skewed. So when it comes to what you're just saying, Mary Ellen, you know, that we have to work these hours. Yeah, Pam.
Yeah, I think the hours definitely contribute, but I don't think that's the only problem that contributes to poor mental well-being in kitchens. There is atmospheres.
Oh, I lost you.
There are ingrained behaviour patterns, there are habitual behaviours, there's things like really poor diet, like individuals really not taking care of themselves, like eating badly, drinking far too much coffee, drinking too much alcohol, smoking does the same sort of thing in a human body as caffeine and alcohol, the kind of peaks and troughs, and all of that is exhausting to a mind that is already pushed quite hard.
Yeah.
So and there is also a question about whether this industry actually does attract a higher than perhaps standard representative amount of people with mental health difficulties than other industries do. Like whether, you know, where people, you know, it attracts people that maybe aren't so comfortable in very straightforward office type environments, so they we have a sort of disproportionate amount of people with mental well-being issues. And I think there's also I spent a few years in London kitchens in the early 2000s, and I know then there was a lot of like bravado around, you know, just never saying that you couldn't deal with the 80, 90 hour weeks. You had to, you know, you had to be okay with it. Like, you couldn't ever be like, oh God, this was hard, wasn't it? You had to be like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm totally like, smashing this. And
I think even more than that, it's such a badge of honour. Like, the more hours you've worked and the more exhausted you are,
exactly. And I found, like, you know, senior members of staff that you take on, and you're kind of like, right, guys, it's whatever, it's at 4 o'clock, we've cleaned down for lunch. Can we all get out for a couple of hours for break because you're on a split? I need you back here at 6 o'clock, or whatever it is. And, you know, you get the senior guys who are like, no, I don't need a break, I'm going to push on through. And then, you know, all the junior guys are like, well, that guy's just pushing on through, I'm going to push on through. He's just like, no. And then it does get really hard for me to be the one saying, okay, I'm going to be the one to take a break, because I'm the one that's actually going into the office to do all the freaking paperwork and the orders and all the other stuff. So I'm hardly a great example either, because I'm the one picking up the slack.
I want to come to Emma Underwood, and I think that what you've just said is hit the nail on the head. It starts with us. Once again, we need to just make the change within ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I come from, so I had a nervous breakdown when I was 25, 6. I was doing a PhD. I had some personal, quite bad personal problems, and I started like really struggling with reading and writing, and I had to, because I couldn't concentrate for a long amount of time, and I was lecturing at the time in history, and I couldn't continue it. I had to quit, and I was waitressing part-time at the time, and I started to do it. I took it on full-time, and now this is why I'm working in the industry. And for me, like, it actually did the opposite. It completely saved my mental health, because like having to get up in the morning and having to like smile and be happy and like serve guests and like having that structure, for me, like, I mean, I guess I do have a fragile mental health, but I haven't, in the last like 7 years, I haven't had any bad experiences with it. And it's because I've always had this structure and this, like, I've had to be happy and welcoming and surrounded by people all the time and like enjoyment. So I've had, for me, mental health in the industry, I mean, I see it, and I definitely see it in chefs, definitely. And I have, but it means that with my experience, I know what to look out for as well, which is really good. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That was really lovely. I want to come to Sally, and then Emma Reynolds. Did you have a question? Sally first.
I think what Emma Underwood just said about structure is a very good point, actually. I've had a few chefs that have had quite serious mental health problems, in be it depression or anxiety, and I think actually the structure of the job in the kitchen is the one thing that's actually helped them get through, because they know that they have to get up and be at that job at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And specifically one example I can think of someone that would stay in bed for their entire days off, and the only reason they would get out of bed would be to come to work. And then once they actually got to work, all of the anxiety kind of drained away when they got into that, pressure and throw of service. It makes it go away. That I had anxiety issues just after I took over as a head chef at the Harwood. I basically, it got so bad that I was having like panic attacks in the fridge, because I was just doubting myself so much. But then as soon as I got into service, that would all just melt away, because I was like, right, I need to focus on this now.
Yeah.
So it can be both ways. And I do think that, the hospitality industry, there are a lot of mental health issues. And I do think a lot of it is to do with the hours. Obviously, if you're exhausted, it's a lot more difficult to deal with. But I think, as managers, like, I've worked in some pretty tough kitchens and been treated badly and felt bad and been made to feel bad. And I think, as we are managers now, like, I promised myself that I'd never make anyone else feel like that. And I've got a team that can come to me. And the Pilot Light campaign, when they came out in Restaurant Magazine, they did a poster. And it was basically a poster to rip out the magazine and stick on the wall of the kitchen or wherever, the notice board, and say, like, let's talk about this. If you've got a problem, you can come to me. And one of my girls actually came to me about 2 days later and said, look, that poster, that's me. And I just want you to know that when I go quiet, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I have anxiety issues. And then we got to talk about it. And then now I know when she's feeling, a bit anxious or scared or whatever, we can just go outside and we can have a quick 5-minute breather and a chat, and I'll go and get her a glass of water, and then she's all right. So I think it's sort of opening those lines of communication to be able to support people. But you do definitely have to start with yourself. Like, if I hadn't have but if I hadn't have addressed my own issues, I think it probably would have been a lot more difficult for me to help anybody else with theirs.
Yeah, I agree. I spent that 2 or 3, like I think anyone starting a business, you do end up pushing yourself probably beyond what is sensible. and I ended up in much the same position, you know, on the point of collapse, for like not being able to recognise myself in the way that I could remember myself. And I took myself to the doctor, and I got counselling. And one of the things that the counsellor said was that a lot of this is habitual behaviour. You're training your brain to behave in particular ways in particular situations, and you can retrain your brain to behave in other ways in other situations. And you, but without knowing that that's actually possible, you do get trapped in ways of feeling anxious, feeling stressed, feeling angry, and not being able to break out of that, and just thinking it's you and there's something wrong with your personality. You know, I can see now, like, you know, in other people that come into the kitchen, I can see these patterns of behaviour, and you can address it, and you can try and help, and or get them help if you can't help yourself. And you know, you're also very open when other people can come and sort of say, you know, I do have problems with anxiety, I do have problems with this, and you know the sort of space and that you have to give them. But yeah, I just think without actually knowing that it is possible, like, because I think, you know, people conflate what's going on in their mind with their own personality. They think it's them. It's not, and it's like, it's not necessarily. It's you suffering from a particular way of a particular illness, I suppose, of your mind. It's just because it's in your mind, you think it's personality, and it's not. There's ways of dealing with it.
I want to go ahead and read some questions out, if that's okay.
Yeah, we got interesting one from Laurie, I think. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Do you think that the running costs of restaurants is why in the industry we typically do not get benefits such as maternity and sick pay and private health insurance that so many other businesses provide, especially given the prevalence of substance abuse and stress and anxiety in hospitality?
That's a great question, especially about like the health insurance. And don't know if everyone managed to read that article in the New York Times Magazine that Gabrielle Hamilton wrote. She's had a restaurant prune in New York for 20 years. And the one thing, I mean, the whole thing really made me cry. But the fact that even after 20 years and winning James Beard Awards and being so incredible is that she's still like on her hands and knees cleaning the eggshells out from underneath the stove because she can't afford a cleaning company to come do it for her. So why is it like, I mean, we've already discussed how people are not paid well enough in this industry, that more of the onus needs to go onto the guest, but also this business model is not allowing our employees to actually benefit from some of the perks that other industries might give them, which might be why we see people leave this industry.
Yeah, I think the average profit margin for a restaurant in the UK is between about 3 to 5%. Yeah. It doesn't leave much room for manoeuvre. I mean, obviously people are making a lot more than that, you know, 15, 17 would be really good, but there's not much leeway. You know, you have upwards only rent reviews every 4 or 5 years, whatever it might be. Why is that only going in one direction? And there's a lot of pressure on costs, and I think there's a lot of downward pressure on we've already talked about it a bit, but how much people are willing to spend on food. I think I was reading in the 50s, I think 40% of household income would go on to food, and that's probably food that you would buy to eat in the home. And now, because food costs have just, because of global supply chains, reduced in supermarkets, and people just don't want to spend that much money on everyday food. They might do it for a treat, but maybe not doing that quite so frequently. And I think it's very hard to introduce things like health insurance or healthcare for staff. That would probably just negate a small amount of profit that most, definitely small restaurants, are able to make.
Yeah, that's definitely something we need to work on. Maybe that's something for the Hospitality Grant Fund.
Yeah, but also we do have a national health service, which is where we differ from America.
Yeah, and I think that a lot more restaurants in America definitely are starting to offer health insurance, because obviously they have to. But yeah, when I was a waitress, I just lived life dangerously. which is not great. And particularly on the maternity and sick pay. Actually, sick pay might be a good one to just discuss. We don't get it. You call out sick, you just, right? We don't get paid.
We pay
statutory sick pay.
There's statutory sick pay.
Yeah.
Do all of your restaurants pay that then?
It's tricky. I've never docked wages for sick days, not for salaried staff that work insane hours. It just doesn't seem okay. Now I'm in a position now where most of the staff, particularly front of house, will work a pretty normal week, like maybe 40-45 hours. So and then they might have some weeks they do overtime. So now we're in that position, it feels more okay to use the stat sick pay route. But it's I mean that's not a benefit, that's just a legal right, the stat sick pay and maternity pay.
Yeah. I guess it's just not as great as other industries, is it? No, but I just wanted to talk I know we're running out of time. I saw this question from Pippa. Is it possible that the solution to all of these topics post COVID-19 is that the hospitality industry needs to become more than what it is already? Maybe there isn't a place for restaurants that do not play a bigger part in society anymore. Restaurants that only serve as a business will continue to use TRONC, continue to damage public perception, exploit stages, and create working environments with detriment to people's mental health. Whereas a restaurant that is a social hub, a voice, and a game changer will avoid these niggles we just talked about in our stock take naturally. Is changing the reason for operating in the first place? Is changing the reason for operating in the first place is the solution?
Only if it's incentivized and rewarded by things like tax breaks and grant-funded bodies and all the other levers that capitalist governments have for rewarding behaviours that they want. They already use all of this. It's all over the place, like all through agriculture and arts funding. Governments will use tools to reward businesses and organisations to do certain things. But currently, restaurants are just seen as businesses that only deliver an end product. If you can actually show that we do a whole bunch of other things like that, and you can quite easily, we have the tools to measure things. People have done this before in other sectors. Governments do it all the time. Then yes, you can prioritise restaurants that are doing good things, that are doing more social good, that are supporting small suppliers, communities, paying their staff fairly, promoting good mental health. All of these things, they can be rewarded through things like paying less VAT or getting a grant or whatever it is. This is all entirely possible and entirely legal and entirely the sort of thing that goes on with governments anyway. They just have to do it.
Let's do it. I want to change the world.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sick of things operating like this. It makes me really sad. I love the hospitality industry more than life itself. The restaurant is where I feel most at home. It's what I crave, and I've had a bad day or a good day, and I love being able to create special moments for people. But I'm sick and tired of listening to my friends and watching me and my partner even, scrape together some kind of a life. And I don't want it to be like this anymore.
It's not a fair reward for the effort, I would say. No. And I think if it was properly valued and properly funded, then all the stuff that is great about it, the stuff that it is a job that you can apply real passion and dedication to, you can see, it's completely democratic as well. It's open to anyone. If you have basic literary skills, you can do like really well and have an amazing career. So it's just, and it's loads of fun, and the things that are bad about it are fixable. It just needs a shitload of money put into it.
Okay, we'll go on the hunt.
A shitload of money. then yeah.
I'll go and find some. We're gonna have to wrap things up because I think we've kept people for some time, and hopefully we'll. What I hope is that after this, someone's got a phone call. It reminds me of that cat meme that went around. I don't know if anyone saw that. But hopefully this will be the first of a few more of these webinars. Hopefully we'll see some of the same faces. There's obviously a lot here and we've only scratched the surface. I wasn't promising that we were going to come up with some mega solutions at the end of an hour and a half, but I think we've made a nice start and there's some really great thoughts and positivity that came out of all this. How do you feel?
Good.
Yeah, good.
Good. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who attended. Next time I'll make sure there's like a waiting room before you come in. And if we didn't get to your
waiting room.
What's that?
There are cocktails in the waiting room.
I mean, if you're at home, I guess you could have a cocktail in the waiting room. If you asked a question and we didn't answer it, I have them here. So I'm going to try and read through and see if we can get you some answers. But if not, we'll save them for maybe another time. But keep asking them and feel free to get in touch with me at Ladies of Restaurants if there's something you really, really think we should address in one of these webinars. I'd like to keep doing these because it looks like we're not going back to work until July. So, although that's unsure.
I'm working.
Well, Emma's working.
I'm working too.
Okay, fine. Some of you are working. But thank you so much and have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's finished.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.